Good morning, everybody. So this morning's been a fun morning. It's one of those things when you sit down on your computer and like the first thing you see is an error, and you're like, all right, all right, it's gonna be one of those days. And sure enough, it's been one of those days, issue after issue. But you know what the good thing is? We're all adaptable. We can all kind of figure out the curves that life throws at us in real time. And I think that's kind of the a positive frame we all need to maintain is just not get bogged down with reactionary frustration and emotional thinking and just all right, well, we'll figure out a set of problems to solve today. And the important thing is we are here together. I hope you all have your cup of coffee or tea, whatever in hand, so we can come together and we can enjoy the best Saturday morning of your life. And how do we come together? We come together around Canada's now, and we're going to distribute this around the world, by the way. Because Canada's a world power, right? And we're so influential around the world. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our influence to help disseminate the newest version of Canada's land acknowledgement and give that to the rest of the world. It goes like this. It says, we in Canada would like to gently, because we're Canadian and we're polite, we'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here savagely killing and genociding each other at the time. They're not in charge anymore, thank God. So we're here till the Americans show up. Now leave us the hell alone. Sip. I think the leave us the hell alone part is the most important part because that's what I think unifies so many of us, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, and we all have kind of a variety of different perspectives. But I think we all agree of just leave me alone. Just leave me alone, leave my family alone, leave me alone. Don't tell me what to say, don't tell me what to think, don't tell me what pronouns to use, don't tell me, yeah, just you do you, I do me, get off my lawn. Right? That describes most of us. Please, if you could, one of the most persuasive things we can all do is reciprocity. And how can we engage in reciprocity? How can you engage in reciprocity? You can either like, share, or if you're not already, subscribe. One of those things. You don't have to do all three, just one. It would be a great favor, and I would owe you in the future, and you would be able to collect on that favor in the future, I promise you. I'm going to be in Florida next week, speaking on a panel, I guess the following week, and I got a bunch of stuff to do down there. If any of you are in Florida and would like to come to one of the events I would be at, let me know. Just shoot me a DM and I'll give you some of the details. As long as you're not a Russian bot or a Pakistani bot or whatever, an Iranian bot or, any of these terrorist bots, a Chinese bot, whatever. As long as you're not one of those, yeah, come on out. Come hang out with us. It'll be a lot of fun if you join us. So I hope you're doing well. Seeing a lot of, it's weird. It's difficult to plan one of these things out because there's so many things changing minute to minute. I'm thinking about doing kind of a night thing that incorporates Discord, and that will allow me to do a lot more video sharing as well. I tried it the other day, and with the setup that I have right now, it just caused so much disruption in my workflow. So I'm still gonna have to needle that thread and figure that out and make it work. So I do apologize, but it's more about us just coming together and having some coffee and talking about all the noise going on in the world, but not getting so wrapped up in kind of the emotional outrage. Like all the people that just they thrive on it. I'm not one of those. Yeah, you like to get a little bit, excited and into stuff, but you don't want that to determine your life and how you move forward. So this is our calm space. Yeah, we'll get a little excitable, but it's all in good fun, right? Mm. So yesterday we talked about Melissa Wong, who seems to be a political entryist involved in the Mises Institute, a formerly libertarian organization. So it seems, as she's been engaging in slut shaming, as the lefties would call it, of these poor Iranian girls who have been living under oppression and stripped of their individual agency for many, many years by the Ayatollah gang. And I mean, while most of us are celebrating it, those of us, especially who are more libertarian on things, Melissa Wong has resorted to, well, they all look like hookers. So that sounds a lot more like China. That sounds like China than it does any sort of libertarianism. And the Chinese are very much engaged in the CCP, and CCP loyalists are very much engaged in political entryism through institutions, NGOs, think tanks, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's what that is. I could be wrong, but it seems to have all the indicators and warnings of that. Yesterday, we also discussed we discussed the 70% we never see, and that was in this case when MBS publicly was saying, we don't support the bombing of Iran and the removing of the Ayatollah regime, but privately, he was calling Trump like every hour on the hour, saying, "Please, please, just take him out already." And like many of us were, that is, by the way, that's 99% of politics. That's why people are always, we say they talk out of both sides of their mouths. Politicians do. They're just kind of leveraging a position because there's always negotiations and planning going on behind the scenes, and that's just kind of the nature of what politics is, at least from my experience. Your experience may differ. Your mileage may differ, but that's kind of what I've seen. Over on BlueSky, I'm a big fan of the 5 people on BlueSky who are completely crazy. BlueSky is the Soviet Twitter, sometimes called BlueSky, but it's really BlueSky. And I think the Iranian success, or at least the American-Israeli success in Iran, I think it's all but killed BlueSky, because some of these maniacs and these bots go on to BlueSky and try to tell people why it's a good thing if you're a pro-feminist, anti-misogynist sort of lefty type of person, that it's good for you, it's bad for us that the Iranian mullahs that were jailing, stoning, and torturing women, that they should be kept in power. I think that perspective has destroyed BlueSky, and it seems to be the only people right now posting are Luke Skywalker and Aaron Rupar, who's we know is famous for just deceptively editing videos. That's his job for the leftist think tanks. And that's it. There's still nothing really going on there. Even the kind of the tech, which is something I go on there for. So I think I'm going to start exploring more in detail Reddit and report back to you, because Reddit also has become a dumpster fire over the past number of years. But there's some interesting stuff going on there. So in AI news, and this is for people who love AI and for people who are afraid of AI. And by the way, good morning, Maureen. Good morning, Risa. I didn't realize you live in BC. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in AI, there's a couple of things that there's an AI conference. So a lot of news that's been coming out in the space for the past couple of days. So Larry Ellison, who is the man behind Oracle, Oracle is basically the infrastructure of enterprise computing for many years, when it was Oracle established in the 80s or something like that. He's like the Bill Gates you don't hear about because it's not retail software so much. But anyways, he was doing a fireside chat, and he talked about some of the struggles that the AI companies have. And what he essentially said, I mean, we'll simplify it into a few lines here, but the overall thesis of what his comments were AI companies all have the same problem. So referring to, I guess, Gemini and OpenAI and XAI Grok and whatever. He said this is his opinion. He infers that their models are worthless, not the technology, the talent, or the billions spent training them, but the data that they were trained on. And what he's referring to is what's called the scrubbing data. And that's the database that the AI uses for information. Some of you, I'm sure, have experienced this and complained about it. You know, when you see people say, "Oh, OpenAI is woke," or Grok is woke, I've heard that too. It's just because the certain data that they're scrubbing for that particular query has included some woke posts. This is why, you know, Reddit is one of the biggest websites on the internet. This is why it's so alarming that both Reddit and Wikipedia have been completely co-opted by communists. And Reddit in particular, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, is when it fell off a cliff. When all these mods, they're all like Antifa, hardcore communists. Not all of them, obviously, but many of them. It's funny, and they're so engaged in a public company. I guess they're. What happened to capitalism is bad. But anyways, so what they do is they gatekeep both Wikipedia and Reddit, and that then skews the scrubbing data that these AI models are using, and that's the long-winded version of what I just said, what Larry Ellison is trying to address, right? And what he argues is that the slop on the internet is what's ruining these models. What do you think? Has that been your experience? I mean, I think that's partially correct. I think this is the skill set that you can develop around prompting. And what we often do is we'll ask an AI model a question or a query. And my top tip is always give it a boundary and tell it what not to do. Tell it what you want it to do. Also tell it what not to do or what sources not to use. So here's my query and my question mark, and my question that I want you to address, or a thesis I want you to kind of work through some idea. And this is the list of sources I want you to ignore and not use in your scraping data. I think if you do that, my experience has been you'll find things will definitely feed your confirmation bias much more, which is the other problem, is that, you know, search engines and AI are just basically confirmation bias machines. But if you understand the human operating system, that's kind of how we work, and it's very difficult for us to shake. Anyways, I think what's most important is not even, I mean, the data is obviously important when you're looking for facts, but the most important thing for these models is how the AI interacts with you, i.e., its personality type, and does it resonate with you? And I think that's why there's lots of different AIs. Grok seems to have the most human-like personality traits. It's actually quite interesting over time when you use it. Whereas the other ones, OpenAI, I guess, is a little bit better, and Gemini, it's like you're talking to a toaster. But then Gemini yields much better results for certain types of queries. This is why it's important to get familiar with this stuff and use it. We're still at AI 1.0. It's not Skynet. I don't think it's ever going to be Skynet. It's not taking over the world, and we're going to discuss that in a second. But much like when personal computing was on the cusp and just became dominant in the culture in the early 1980s, those of us who benefited because we had a computer in our home since we were, 3 years old, we were always many legs up of everybody else, even to this day. What I found amazing, and I saw a little bit of this start when my business was on the university campus, is how many students in maybe the younger millennials and Generation Z, the Zoomers, because they started to come through, is how little they understood about computing. Yeah, they could use TikTok and they could use Instagram well, but they had no concept of the structure of programming languages. I'm not talking about developers and stuff. Obviously, they do. I'm talking about regular students. Whereas I think in our generation, because you always had to figure out workarounds, if you wanted to use whether it's a Commodore 64 or an XT like I had, you had to boot up and you had to know the boot sequences to turn it up. And you had to know how to scroll directories and change directories and delete them using just basic MS-DOS code in the case of an XT. But I think the next generations have lost that, and there's a disconnect. So if you want to avoid that, get you and your kids very familiar with all these AI platforms. In my opinion, that's the best way to future-proof them. But on this, so go on to AI at this. I guess it's the same conference, I believe. I don't remember what I couldn't find out which one it was. I just saw the videos popping up, and I searched for it, and I was running out of time. But Alex Karp, who runs Palantir, is part of the Palantir leadership. He also made some comments, and I believe it was the same one. I think it's at the same conference, as I said. But before I tell you what Alex Karp's comments were from Palantir, prepare for some doomerism. This is the doomerism frame. And the problem for me with the doomerism frame, it's built on a lot of assumptions that we don't know. And I do find that a lot of the doomerism stuff is built on really negative assumptions that have not been proven. I understand the temptation to, error to the side of caution, but sometimes it can go a little bit too far, and that distorts your ability to predict, which is something that I'll go through the list one day of many of the things that I predicted effectively. Some things I got wrong, of course. And there's a reason when you have different models of the world and you know how to apply them, you start to become pretty good at predicting where the needle is moving. And anyways, we'll talk about that more. So this is the doomerism frame. It's filled with a lot of assumptions, and it also ignores something Scott Adams would talk about. Our friend and departed one. That's why many of us who knew Scott will bring him up and try to bring some of his life lessons into our streams, because there really is a lot there. But he named it after him. It's funny. He named this phenomenon after himself. He calls it the Adams law of slow moving disasters, and that when humans collectively, not that we're collective, but as a government, as a society, whatever, sees very serious impending doom coming in the future, that we have a great ability to solve those problems. And I'm thinking, think of things like nuclear holocaust, right? Nuclear war. Well, we haven't really had one, have we? And I'm not sure we ever will, to be honest. Hopefully. I don't think we will. In the 80s, the ozone layer, which the ozone layer apparently has gotten much smaller. The climate change hysteria, which everybody knows, there's a lot of really funny data with that. And despite all of Al Gore's predictions that Miami would be underwater by 2014, I don't know, it seems a little bit late. And the polar ice caps have apparently increased in size. You hear all sorts of opinions. One side says they're smaller, one side says they're bigger. Regardless, there's still a hell lot of ice in the Arctic, isn't there? Right? So, anyways, this is what Alex Karp's comments were about AI in this framing. Remember, this is the doomer frame. So I think I've primed you to understand there's a lot of assumptions here that aren't necessarily accurate, in my opinion. He says Silicon Valley takes away every white-collar job in America. Okay, firstly, every white-collar job, there's no such technology that will take away every job in every sector. I'm sorry. It's just like there's no political philosophy that has all the answers. But anyways, he says the lawyers, the analysts, the consultants, the coders, and at the same time, and by the way, those are all people he spends all his life with, right? So that's his framing of the world, is the people within his network. So of course he's now going to bias to everyone. Well, that's not everyone in the world. I'm sorry, I interrupted myself. He says, and at the same time, arms the military with the same AI. There is only one outcome: nationalization. There's only one outcome? Why? Right? This is priming you to accept doomerism. And he said the only one outcome is the government takes your technology. That's the only outcome? Sounds like a little bit of a stretch. And by the way, Alex Karp's a brilliant guy, and I'm glad he's bringing this up, because it's important for us to consider this. This is why you have the law of slow moving disasters, is people bring this up and then society kind of works through them. He says Alex Karp says a horseshoe effect is forming on the far left and the far right. Yes, we do. We know that. They don't agree on anything. I don't know. I think they agree a lot more than we realize, except one thing: Tech is not paying the bills, and the industry should be seized. Well, that's the collectivist frame, right? Whether you're a Hugo Chavez communist or you're a Tucker Carlson woke right, you believe in capturing and stealing the technology from private industry, of course. So he says, look at what just happened. The Pentagon told Anthropic, let us use your AI for anything we want, no restrictions. Anthropic said no. Well, we don't know that that's what happened. I explained that yesterday. Was the restrictions that the Pentagon wanted released was the fact that maybe they wanted an AI that wasn't woke, that they could talk about the Middle East as they are hunting mullahs. And I don't imagine Anthropic is programmed by default to allow you to game out strategies to hunt mullahs. That's what I think might be happening, but I could be wrong, right? The government designated them being Anthropic, a national security threat. Trump ordered every federal agency to stop using their AI, the Defense Product Act, a Korean War era law on the table. Hours later, OpenAI signed a deal with the Pentagon. You know what he just slipped in there? Did you see that? He just primed you to accept his premise. A Korean War era law. What's the relevance of that? It's like that meme that I posted with Tom Homan when somebody said, Trump is trying to use an old law to enforce borders. And he said, old law, Constitution's over a couple hundred years old. We still pay attention to that, don't we? Right? So this is a fallacy that he's put in there. But he's using it to try to persuade you. Again, it's not a criticism of Alex Karp. It's important he brings this up. I'm just trying to show you the strategies that he's using to persuade you into the doomer frame, which I don't believe is where we're at. He said the message to every AI company in America, fall in line or you get replaced. Is that the message to every AI company in America? Are some of the ones that draw images, or what was the other one that Scott used to use? The one that's tried to be like a social friend to you? I don't think that's what I don't think they would fall into this category as well. But anyways, he says, now combine that with this. Anthropic's own CEO says AI could wipe out 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs. Yeah, there's a whole lot of assumptions there. A whole lot of things have to happen to make that happen. And we see AI is being integrated into businesses and struggles to be effective. It'll be more effective over time, but I don't think it's going to be here quickly. It's one of those, we overestimate change in the short term and underestimate change in the long term, right? Unemployment could hit 20%. Where do you get 20%? Well, it sounds reasonable. It sounds like it could be achievable, but it's still a very scary number. That's why he chose 20%. And probably subconsciously, right? Because we do know how to persuade people subconsciously, especially when you're in a business, in a scenario where you're running a business and you have to know how to sell to people. You have to know those sort of little tweaks and triggers that works. Unemployment could hit 20%. No factory workers or truck drivers, but the people with degrees. So he said, sorry, not factory workers. Not talking about blue collar, he's talking about white collar people. 71% of Americans already say they're worried AI will permanently take their jobs. Steve Bannon, credible source, says, we'll talk about him a little bit later, says AI job loss will be the issue of the 2028 election. So he's trying to prime you for that, to will that into existence. I don't think it will. It might be. And Karp, the man who builds this technology for the military, is telling his own industry, if you don't make AI work for regular people, the state will take everything you've built. The political bomb is already ticking. What do you think? Do you think there's a lot of presuppositions in there? Do you think maybe that's a little bit? I don't know, man. I understand the concern. I get it, but there's a lot of inferences there of things that aren't necessarily true. I bias to in this case with AI, Scott Adams' law of slow-moving disasters. That I think we're going to figure this out. Scott used to say AI is going to be banned. I don't know that it's going to be banned. I'm worried that it's going to be overly regulated. And that's perhaps why companies like Anthropic and OpenAI have models that are slightly woke because they're trying to avoid litigation. Is my case. That's what I think is happening, right? But anyways, so you also notice in this he ignores, at least in this segment, he's not addressing all the amazing advancements at AI, and I'm sure he has in many cases. I'm not going to be uncharitable. Just in this little thread, right? I think it would be more credible if he kind of weaved the positive with the negative, but then it wouldn't be so scary, right? And I think also we live in this increasingly hyper impatient and modern world where we have very little attention span. You know, if new technology comes out and it doesn't cure cancer immediately, it sucks. And that's frustrating. This is just, we're not even Commodore 64 era, like level with AI. We're like at Commodore VIC 20 level. Like it's still really early, right? And I think this is the world of it cure cancer or it sucks. That's not reality. That's not the real world. And people often lose sight of that, in my opinion. It's an evolutionary process of discovery. And that's where we are with AI. That's why um, I am so excited about it. And that's why, I don't know, I find it amazing. I actually have on my to do list this weekend to restructure all my AI infrastructure because I've just learned so much more about effective prompting and on the different platforms. And I want to put some of this stuff into work so I can have more output, right? All right, and a little bit of comic relief. And by the way, good morning, Heidi. Uh, Maureen says, I owned my advertising and marketing company for over 45 years now. I can see the sales pitch a mile away, right? Exactly. So, Maureen, you're the best. And good morning, Risa. And you can hear me. It's great. And good morning, Beth. Happy Saturday to you too. I know Beth can't be here on Friday. She's at work. But I hope everything is excellent with you. And by the way, Beth, I can't see any of the memes on the current structure on locals, but I will figure it out. And what the hell happened here? Oh, okay. I have. I think I can see. I can scrub this along. I can see Twitter comments because those don't come through. Oh, hold on. They don't come through on the encoder, but I think I have the window up here and I can see them. So if anyone wants to post a Twitter comment, let me know and I'll see if I can see it. That would be a big help for me. Okay, so comic relief. Joe Biden. Everybody remember Joe Biden? Sleepy Joe, right? The hero of America. There's a story in the Gateway Pundit, and this is great. it's it's a video about Biden, and so he was. And this is the best part. So I'll explain the article in a second. But the video that gets queued up on the Gateway Pundit for Biden, I tried it 3 times and I got the same effect. I don't know if you will, depending where you are. But you go to the Gateway Pundit, you click on the article, and before the video of Joe Biden speaking starts, there's an advertisement. And the advertisement is for Alzheimer treatment. It's so great. I know that Alzheimer's great, obviously, but the fact that even even the algorithm knows that when Joe Biden is speaking, we need to put some dementia medication advertising leading up to it. It's so funny, right? Simulation alert, perhaps. So Jesse Jackson died. Okay, someone thought it was a good idea to bring Biden to speak. So good. And Biden looks horrible, right? And listen, you got to feel sympathy for the guy, whether you like him or not. He's dealing with cancers, dealing with Alzheimer's, and probably a whole bunch of other medical issues that have not been publicly divulged, and we don't know. So don't like to see anybody suffer, even though people who may have deserved it in some way, shape, or form. You still don't want to wish that on people. But you got to give him credit for him allowing them to shoot him up with whatever drugs he needed. And so I think they just put Quaaludes in a syringe and put it in him and roll him out on stage to deliver a line. It's so great. So this was Joe Biden's line at the wedding. And he said, now, this is Joe Biden speaking. Now, if I told you all earlier when I was a kid, he always does that when I was a kid because dementia people do. They can't remember the short term. When I was a kid, I had a cleft palate or club foot. None of you would have laughed, but it's okay to laugh at shuddering. Sorry, at stuttering. I'm not being critical of you, but think about it. It's one place where people think you're stupid. Oh, really? I'm a hell of a lot smarter than most of you. Well, all kidding aside, it makes you feel really, really small. Makes you feel really, really small, he added. Now, he's not a comedian. I'm not a comedian either. But when you watch the video, was that comedy or was that the actual him breaking through that he's got a very, very strong ego, like many people who are in politics, breaking through that they'll veil it as a line. Oh, I'm just joking, but I don't think he was joking. And I think because of his illness, it's becoming more and more difficult for him to hide his personality. I just thought it was very, I don't know, off color. Yeah, some people laughed and they took it as a joke. I mean, how else are you going to do? You got this dementia guy who was president. He's on stage. Like, what are you going to do, right? Anyways, I don't like Biden politically at all, but I do feel bad. It does seem like this is bordering on elder abuse, but at the same time, maybe this is what gives him the will to keep on living. As you know, that happens to a lot of older people. They just lose the will to go on, and it's very sad. So I don't know. I'm of two minds about it. I know what you think, but let me know what you think in the comments. News about Iran. So apparently, what's left of the mullah regime, this feuding regime, is lobbing whatever they can, drones, rockets, whatever, in every direction. It's just Wile E. Coyote all over the place. And a drone landed at the Dubai airport. It looks like it landed adjacent to the terminal. I could be wrong, but we've only seen, at the point of starting this, we've only seen one video of it. It looks like it hit the area where the planes are on the tarmac next to the terminal at the far end. So hopefully it didn't cause any damage, or it doesn't look like, but you know, you never know from that far of a distance. And it leads to one aspect of Islamic terrorism that so few people ever talk about, and it's frustrating. I've asked people to kind of, if they can cover it and focus on this, but they never do. And I just don't have the time and resources to do it on my own. I have so much other stuff to do. But it's this question. It's what is the economic cost for all this, jihad terrorism all over the world, right? What is the effect on the economy, the negative consequences to the economy, and the ripple effect of it? Like what happens? Because I mean, right now, the Dubai airport is closed, which means all of these airlines and flights from all over the world, and I'm sure most of you know, Dubai is a major hub for several airlines that go to Southeast Asia and kind of connect Europe, Southeast Asia, and well, you might even say America to Southeast Asia as well. So now that airport is closed for this stupid little remote controlled drone, right? What is the economic impact of that just for the day alone to the world economy, right? It can't be zero. I know it's not zero. And the other question is, all of these, the bombings and explosions and security provisions, and you having to take your feet off at the airport. I know, not your feet, but it feels like you're taking your feet off at the airport all the time. Just get it on a plane and whatever. And this is all, especially the 60,000, what's approximately 60,000 Islamist attacks since 9/11. What's the cost of that on the global economy? It's got to be trillions of dollars that all this BS has cost the world economies. What would you found out if you're making 20% less at your job? I know this is far-fetched, it's not how it works, but just for a thought exercise. If you found out that the era of Islamic terrorism has led to you earning 20% less at your job, would you be annoyed? Because that's that's the effect on the economic ripple effect. So I don't know. I think it's important, and we should start talking more and more about it. If you want to get more people across uh, the political spectrum to actually talk about and address this issue of Islamic terrorism, just start talking about the cost, man. How it costs people in their money. How much of your tax dollars has to now go to security provisions because of this nonsense, right? And this is why so many countries in the Middle East are now lined up with the Western world and the rest of the world. Even they're fed up with the Allen snack bars. They're tired of it, right? And it's funny, you never see countries like Canada, Pakistan, England, where they study the negative economic impacts and loss of productivity because of Islamic terrorism and security provisions and all that sort of stuff. You never see them talk about. Like in Canada, for example, which is now the number one money laundering country in the world for terrorism, what are the negative impacts of that? It can't all be good. I mean, why do you think it's difficult for many industries now to compete, and local industries or local businesses now shut down because their competitors are laundering money for terrorism? Their money laundering operations been going on here for a long time, right? Trump did the world such a major economic favor by sinking the entire Iranian navy, right? Because he has freed up the potential for the Strait of Hormuz to be locked down, which the Iranians have been holding it hostage for many, many years. But now he may have helped address this particular issue, which is serious economic negative impacts. You want to get everybody on board? Start talking about the negative economic impacts of Islamic terrorism and the Allen snack bars. Just my opinion. I saw this article a couple weeks ago. I keep wanting to bring it up, but I haven't. But I'll bring it up today. This is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was, as we know, has gone. I mean, look, Steve Bannon is going to go wherever the money is, as we learned from the Epstein files, right? And Mr. Hardcore Conservative was trying to rebuild Epstein's reputation after his conviction, right? So that's kind of where Steve Bannon is. And whatever, listen, it's a market, it's a free market. You want to do that, that's going to make you money, whatever. But I feel vindicated for a couple of reasons. So first, the head of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, if you know who he is, he was the one who was sentenced to 22 years for not being at the January 6th protest and not having involvement in its organization. Then they labeled him a white supremacist, but he's Afro-Latino. It's amazing how the woke lefties will just abandon all their principles and the people they're supposed to support for political gain. That's how you know they're communists, right? And so Enrique Tarrio came out. Let's see if I can pull it up here. He came out against Steve Bannon and said he can no longer support Steve Bannon, even though Bannon had supported him during his his an unfair incarceration. And it's pretty interesting. I'll see if I can post the link for it and explain. But he can clearly see, like many people can see, he's just going where the money is, and this is around the Epstein file stuff, where it became very obvious that it's just a means for money. There's no I don't say no ideology, because that's not always good either, but this is not fueled by genuine concern around the world. There might be some elements of that, but this is also why during the Canadian trucker convoy, I had a couple of people in particular constantly harassing me and hounding me. Go on Steve Bannon's podcast. Go on Steve Bannon's podcast. And if you notice, I was really selective where I would do interviews, despite all the people from the political establishment trying to sabotage us and bringing in the CBC when I told them not to, right? And they brought in CTV, the maniac that was stalking me in the hotel room. And we took a video and laughed at him and and just put it all over the internet. And I was McGregski, whatever his name was. And he got fired shortly after because he just made a fool of himself. It was very, very funny. But there was a reason I was very selective in our media strategy. And so I was regularly pushed by some people who are integralists, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And I said, no. I said, no, I will not do it because the goal needs to be we need to unify as many people as possible. You need to get people like when you do this us versus them, red versus blue thing, you're just going to destroy the society because you know who's going to take advantage of that? The Allen snack bars. It is in their interest that people define themselves on ideological lines and principles and give themselves a label so they don't talk to their neighbors. And that's why the woke people are now trapped in this echo chamber and they're suffocating. They can't see what's going on and they've all lost their minds because they've lost any sort of regular interaction that they have with the rest of us who are kind of have a range of different opinions and center. Sometimes we have very, very right wing opinions like I do. But then sometimes we have very moderate opinions and they don't interact with us. And I've been learning a lot of that since I've been trying to engage with the woke right people, just how blind they are that how people used to think, like they don't even realize anymore. They think they're normal and they don't realize how they've gone over an ideological cliff. And this is what's happening on the what we call the woke right. And I'll talk about that in a second. But this is why I absolutely refused to go on Bannon because I knew he was toxic. Once I would go on there, then they would have everything they would need to completely destroy our reputation. At that time, I liked Bannon at that time. Didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, his relation to Jeffrey Epstein. We didn't know that. I thought his platform was genuine, but I said, listen, we can't keep talking to ourselves. The conservatives know why we're here. We need to get the other people who are in the center. We need to pace them and bring them over to us, right? So, anyways, Wanda says I agree. Glimpses into his reality, for sure. Uh, DJ2R says he has hypnotized himself for so long. Where are you going to get in that? It's not. He didn't hypnotize himself. Somebody else said that. By the way, Rick is here from Cape Breton again. You're always here on Saturdays, Rick. I really appreciate you, brother. It's so nice when you have people from across, not just Canada, but across the U.S. When you get all the different cultures around, especially if we can get people around the world. There's some people from the UK who watch this a little bit later on. So yeah, you're all pretty awesome. So thank you. So, anyways, I can talk more about that, but that's just in general. People are starting to see what's going on, and it's very difficult. This is why I often say it's. You heard me say this a couple of streams ago. It's not the people who are your adversaries who are going to brainwash you. It's the people who you agree with, who are on your side, who you think you can trust. Those are the people who brainwash you, and I think that's exactly what he has exploded, right? That was about Biden. Okay, well, I think it's relevant too, right? Anyways, okay, so this kind of pairs nicely into this quote I want to read for you, okay? And I want you to guess, and I'll have to read it a couple of times because a little bit of a delay, so you can all guess who said this. And aloha, Heidi. Aloha. You should be saying hola. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Anyways, I want to read this quote, okay? It says, it's from an interview. It says, so we have our special Russian truth. You need to accept something that maybe isn't your truth. Think about that. I'll read it again. So we have our special Russian truth. You need to accept something that maybe isn't your truth. Sounds a little bit of my truth, your truth, postmodern, subjectivism, nonsense, ultra leftist. That's what all the wokies say. Oh, well, it's my lived experience. It's my truth. It's not your truth. What happened to the truth, right? The truth is kind of the centrist, objectivist framing of the world, that there are things that are verifiable truth. But here somebody is saying, so we have our special Russian truth. Oh, they're special. You need to accept something that maybe isn't your truth. That is 100% subjectivism. That is postmodernism. That is ultra left. Doesn't get more left than that. And Risa gets it right. That is, and I'm going to explain why this is all relevant, way more relevant than people realize. I'm glad people are now finally picking this up. That is Alexander Dugin. That's what Alexander Dugin said. It was an interview that was posted. Somebody posted today. The account was Evie. If I can find her ad symbol, I put it down here somewhere. I can't find it right now. But anyways, oh yeah, it's EVIKOKALARI. So clearly she's from the culture. She's got to be. If I can't pronounce, it's got to be Slavic or Russian in some way, shape, or form. But anyways, that was Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin says this, and one more time, it's important. Alexander Dugin says, I quote, "So we have our special Russian truth. You need to accept something that maybe isn't your truth." He's doing the my truth thing. Now, Stephen Hicks has been arguing for many, many years that Dugin's philosophy is collectivist, meaning like the progressives or the communists, right? They're all collectivists, as are the Islamists. I've been arguing this for many years. There's many speeches on the internet. If you type in Stephen Hicks, Dugin, you'll find some of his presentations, his speeches, where he lays out and maps out Dugin's philosophy as an ultra leftist. He's basically communist. And although Stephen is much more charitable in his language. And by the way, follow Stephen Hicks online and follow Open College Podcast if you aren't already. I will be having our next episode up shortly. I'm going to work on it when I'm in Miami. So that was from this interview that Evie posted with Alexander Dugin. And he continues to argue relative truth, which is postmodern. He does that all the time. His philosophy is Antifa. He's the same as Antifa. That's what he is. He is Antifa with a Russian accent and a beard. But you hear his name in social media a lot. Why? Why is his name all over the place? You're going to see a lot of it. People have now, I think it's because myself and other people have been crying about this for some time or trying to draw attention to it. And it might have finally taken. I know Insurrection Barbie, if you follow her account, I think she knowed I'd mentioned this to her 6 months ago, maybe, something like that. I shared one of the interviews with one of the presentations of Stephen Hicks, and I'm sure other people have been sending her stuff as well, and she's done an excellent article that she released on X within the past couple of days. I kind of surmises a lot of this stuff, right? And but again, Stephen's been also doing this for well over a decade, right? But why do you hear his name all over social media? Why do you hear Alexander Dugin all over the place? Well, there's people like Tucker Carlson who have been amplifying him. I mean, Tucker's case, he fluffs him, to be entirely honest. As do most of the woke right activists, which I think over time I'm going to help you realize that they're leftists. And here's a perfect example. Mr. My Truth, My Russian Truth. That's not conservative. That's not individualism. That's not objectivism. That's not libertarianism. That is postmodernism. That is textbook postmodernism, right? The subjectivist view of the world. My opinions, which are completely fabricated and false, they're true because they're my truth, right? And he is one of the people who have really helped create the woke right through the veil of, oh, I'm a philosopher. And he's been celebrated all over Europe. You know, he did a debate with Henri Levy in France, who's another leftist. It's kind of lefty versus lefty, spy versus spy sort of thing. And he essentially has all the attributes of a communist, all of them, pretending to be Christian and conservative. And this is how he pulls the wool over people's eyes. I've seen this in real time with people when I try to warn them about somebody and they say to me, but he's a Christian. This is why collectivism is dangerous. Because just because somebody attributes a label to themselves doesn't mean it's accurate, doesn't mean it's like you, they're like you, and doesn't mean they're not very dangerous, right? So he has all the attributes of a communist, pretending, and he uses the veil of Christianity to hide his communism, right? And he did a post today, and it says this, okay? He this is from Alexander Dugin's Twitter, and his Telegram is just all emotional persuasion. By the way, that's how he's getting all these younger people who are just still at the era of self discovery. That's when it's easier for. That's why the communists always target younger people. But this is Dugin's post on X. He says, "I was born and raised up in the USSR by perfect Soviet parents. Remember that. I adhered to the religion, the tradition, and the spirit over matter against all this. So, being born and raised up to the civilization of Epstein, as is the case of modern Americans, doesn't mean you should accept it." Can you see what's going on in there? You see how confusing the statement is? That's persuasion. That's a certain level. It's a certain tactic that's used in persuasion. Use confusing language, tie it to emotion and identity. And that's how you bring, especially younger people, which is who he's trying to target, right? Like, why are these younger people into this old geezer who looks like a drunk hobo, right? It's the persuasion aspect. And I posted, I kind of asked a question, but I mean, before, it's important to understand contextually in Russia and to Russians around the world, Dugin is a joke. He's a slimier version of Noam Chomsky, and no one there takes him seriously, which is odd that in the West, through social media, he has people like Tucker Carlson fluffing him and Dave Smith fluffing him. It's all the same people. When you hear them talk, you can just you're watching Dugin's Twitter thread come through, and it's not Tucker then Dugin; it's the other way around. So my response to this post, I'll read this post again. He says, "I was born and raised up in Russia, in USSR by perfect Soviet parents," and that's key, perfect Soviet parents. "I adhered to the religion, the tradition, the spirit over matter against all this. So being born and raised up in the civilization of Epstein, as is the case in modern Americans, doesn't mean you should accept it." So my question around this was this. Remember, he said he has perfect Soviet parents. Okay. Dugin was indeed born in the Soviet Union, where religion was not tolerated. His father was a communist GRU agent, and they are the people who attacked Christians. There is no universe in the world where a GRU agent's son had exposure to religion. Is this why most Russians dismiss Dugin as a scam artist? You can't have a perfect Soviet parent who is a communist GRU agent and then also go to church where religion wasn't tolerated. He's a scam artist. That's it. It's pretty simple. But he understands how to persuade people. So why is Dugin here? Why is he being fluffed by Tucker Carlson and the woke right? I mean, firstly, because they've been brainwashed into becoming collectivist lefties, right? And the identity that he uses is some form of Christianity, which I don't understand because he's Greek Orthodox. So he has nothing to do with, nothing to do, but it's very distinct. As we know, there's many different Christian religions, right? So why is he here? Well, it's simple. And a friend of mine, we were talking about this, and I like how he articulates it. And I happen to agree, which is Russia is a failed state. Russia has always been a failed state. It failed under the Soviet Union. That's why so many people in the Soviet Union, and if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you saw this. So many people in the Soviet Union were desperate to escape Soviet communism. I remember in the mid 80s, there were so many kids that came to my school over a couple of years that were from Russia that just showed up because they were able to escape. So it's always been a failed state. It failed under Soviet communism. Like, that's the big example when you show communism fails. It fails so bad that the Chinese have had to shift over to fascism. It's a fascist communist hybrid. Um, and now, where's the state of Russia now? So it was failed before the Soviet Union. It failed because of the Soviet Union. And now they have whatever the hell they have, some sort of communist, fascist, centralized mafia, criminal state hybrid, right? That's what it is. It's nothing more. And they couldn't even take Ukraine. They're so powerless, right? Modern Russia is a country that it's pathetic on all measures. That's why so many Russians want to come to the United States or get out or go to the Western world, right? So what is Dugin doing then? What Dugin is, he is with the backing of Russian intelligence. Remember, his father was a GRU agent, right? He's trying to reframe Russia and brainwash you into making it relevant. It has a broken nuclear program that used to threaten the world. I doubt it does anymore, right? It's getting into this monopsony relationship with China that we discussed yesterday. And they've always been one of the three a-holes on the world stage. Do you know that? I mean, in the United Nations, right? What are the three a-hole countries that always voted in the UN against common sense, freedom, and freedom at the UN? There's three countries that always did that: China, Russia, and France, right? Doesn't matter what it is, it's always the leftist idiots. Always, whenever they can go against freedom and common sense, it's always China, Russia, and France, right? So Dugin is trying to brainwash Westerners to think that this country, which has like their personal GDP is something like 1/6 of failing Canada. Like, it's horrible. It's horrible on all measures, right? Similar natural resource structures, Canada, but 1/6 of the personal GDP. If I'm close with my numbers, it is not relevant. He's trying to reframe it to make it relevant. Russia is it's the fat kid in the neighborhood with the broken BMX bike who nobody likes because he comes out and he thinks he's all cool and he yells at everybody, and then he rides away thinking he's the popular one, and everyone just turns their eyes and turns to each other like, what a loser, right? Like, Russia is O'Doyle rules. Remember O'Doyle rules from Billy Madison, right? They O'Doyle rules, and the car slips on the banana peel and they all die. That's Russia, right? Dugin is trying to construct a fantasy that doesn't exist, right? And when Putin dies, once again, Russia will collapse into turmoil and will likely devolve into the similar civil war status that it did every time in the past, like in the 90s, the bread lines and all that sort of stuff. But this time they have this massive Islamist problem within their borders because Putin has also been a coward in the face of the Islamists, playing footsies with them all the time, right? You don't hear that, do you? You hear them always trying to show that they're macho and they're strong. No, he's a cow. He's just like Justin Trudeau with the Islamist problem. He hasn't dealt with anything. It's gotten so much worse under Putin's leadership. He doesn't done squat. And you wouldn't know this because Twitter isn't real, right? What you see online isn't real. So my question is, with regards to Dugin, I think people are going to start to see the veil slip over the next several weeks. This whole experiment, the Dugin experiment of the woke right and Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith, you can see Dave Smith is panicking. You can see it's all crumbling around them because people aren't stupid. At some point, they eventually start to see it. People are just busy. They have other things in their lives, but eventually they start to see the nuance of what's going on. Will the young kids online who have been swindled into parroting Dugin philosophy, his leftist philosophy, do you think they'll admit they were wrong? Will that happen? Do people ever admit that they're wrong? Sometimes, right? Very few, but sometimes. Or do they need a reframe, right? A reframe where they can say, well, he said a few things that were smart, But now as I got to know more and more, as I did more of my own research, I realized, yeah, he's just a fraud, right? Maybe that's the reframe they need to save their egos, because we all have some degree of an ego, some way more than others, especially younger men. Younger men have very strong egos and very proud, and they've bought into his frame, hook, line, and sinker. So you see conservatives behaving like leftists. Sputnik has rusted out. Sputnik. Love how everything is Sputnik. The space program is Sputnik. Their vaccine program was Sputnik. I thought they were all based in Russia. Why did they have their vaccine program? Right? Every country did the same thing. Right? Um, Heidi says postmodernism is the motherlode of intellectual nonsense. Yes, it is. That's why you'll see many times Jordan Peterson has recommended people to read Stephen Hicks's book explaining postmodernism. I actually have to send him a message today. Check out, and by the way, check out Open College. You can find it on Spotify. It's audio only podcast now, but I think we're going to be switching to video and audio very shortly. But we address a lot of this stuff, right? Maureen says it's all a road show. That's exactly what it is. It's just a carnival of misfits that are trying to get attention and trying to causing a lot of damage in the West because of the help of the Islamist money to amplify Tucker Carlson, where he can then amplify the Dugin philosophy to brainwash people. There is much more to Dugin, by the way, that I'll discuss more and more, kind of how he does it, but I'll map that out over time, right? Dugin was the epitome of arrested development. That's a great comment. This all goes back to the philosophy of pragmatism, where truth can be anything the majority thinks it is. That's right. And if he can brainwash people to accepting his Russian truth, then they're going to get somewhere and people will start accepting the fantasy, which is what the woke right has become. But I think that experiment is going to collapse really soon. So, on to something positive. I think that's exactly it. What I've noticed is because myself and other people were talking about Dugin for quite some time. Shout out to Stelios at Lotus Eaters and some other people trying to warn about Dugin. Insurrection Barbie really did an effective deep dive into communicating what Dugin is. And I think even Dan Bongino has now covered it as well. So now the momentum has started, and there's enough people realizing that this might be the source of what's been happening to Tucker Carlson. And I believe, remember when Tucker, I don't know if I mentioned this last time or not, remember when Tucker Carlson was still on Fox News and he freaked out because the CIA was tracking them, as they track many people. But in particular, they told him, you cannot go to Russia. I think it's because they knew he was communicating with Dugin and he was already well on his way. Maybe that's why he got fired from Fox News. Maybe that's the actual reason. I don't know. Could be. It fits. So the good news is, firstly, it's not minus a million degrees today. For those of you who are in Florida, I'm going to see you at the end of the week, and we'll be able to break bread and hang out and have some fun and chill and enjoy the sun a little bit. And this woke right experiment, it's going to take some time to put it out of its misery. You know, it's like spraying cockroaches, right? You spray it one time and you think it's dead, and then it picks up, starts walking around again, and you've got to spray it again. Something you have an experience with when you live in the tropics. But yeah, it's gonna have to repeatedly be hit upon. And by the way, there are other Duginists out there, and I'll talk more about them in the near future. Younger people who have captured the Dugin brain cancer and are now regurgitating it as well, and they're doing a circuit. So we'll start talking about some of those people and exposing their failed philosophy and that they're just regurgitating Dugin philosophy, right? Okay, I'm going to run now. I've gone over a little bit of my time. I'm trying to keep it within an hour. I'll let you know when I start trying to do the other thing with Discord. Maybe I'll be testing it in Florida or not. I'm not sure. But please, if you believe in reciprocity, like, share, or subscribe. And Maureen, absolutely no, absolutely not, nor would I ever. There's a whole lot of problems there with that person. I just would not go near him. Anything you're watching coming from him is not truth. It's just persuasion in the opposite direction. All right, I got to run. I love you all, and I'm going to shut down now, and we'll talk to you all soon. Maureen, thank you. You're the best, and we'll talk to you all soon. All right, bye-bye.